Keith Rucker at VintageMachinery.org. So, working on the LeBlond lathe still, and I was getting ready to go ahead and start wiring things up. I said, you know what? This motor might need some attention. And I got in there and played with it, and we fired this thing up and ran it. It seemed like it was working fine, but when I got in there and started turning this thing, it's got a little resistance in it. I have no real worries about this motor just from the standpoint that I did run it, but at the same time, it's likely that this motor's never been serviced, it's never been checked out. The bearings in this thing is very likely from 1941 when the lathe was new. So I decided I was just going to pull the motor out, we're going to tear into it, and probably at the very least going to replace the bearings in this thing and just give it some new bearings and go from there. So don't know much about it. Like I said, we just got it pulled out. It is a 3 horsepower 3-phase motor made by US Motor, auto start, ball bearing it says. It's either 220 or 440 volts. It's currently wired for 220, which is what we're running it on, and then RPMs on it. Depends on the cycles, and back in the day when this was made, 60 cycles per second, which is pretty much standard now. That really wasn't necessarily standard back then. So it has markings for both 50 and 60 cycles per second. At 60 cycles per second, this is an 1800 RPM motor, and wired for the low voltage, it pulls 8.6 amps. So anyway, let's tear into it. Let's see what's going on with it. First thing we're going to do is probably pull this pulley off the end, and then we should be able to take the bearing housing or the housing apart, split it off, and pull the rotor out and just check things out. So let's start with the pulley. And this is a sheave type pulley. I actually see Browning's name on here, which is still in business, still makes stuff. I don't know if this is original to this or not, but I've dealt with this kind of a pulley before. And basically, it comes in 2 parts. You've got a hub that fits up on whatever size shaft you want, and that's all part of this outer part here, this little flange that has this bore in it. Then there's a taper, and you can get different size pulleys to go on the sheave. The sheave is the same. So basically, you buy your hub to fit the shaft that you're doing, and then these outer parts just fit the hub. So there's 3 screws that hold these in right now. So these screws are basically going in here and pulling this up onto that taper. So these are tapped into the actual pulley itself, and it's pulling it tight on there. There's 3 more holes in here, and these are threaded here, and this is for removing them. So we're going to pull these out. These here are not, this part's not threaded. The part that's threaded is the actual pulley. This part's threaded here, so this is, we're actually going to push with this. So we'll put the 3 in here, put some pressure on those, and push it off of that taper and break it loose. That's the plan. I'm going to use a little driver gun here just to kind of speed things up. So we'll just pull these out. And turn around, and they should just thread right back into the 3 threaded areas. Of course, there's probably some trash and gunk down in these threads, so hopefully we can get that in there without cross-threading anything. So, all right, that one's pushing on it now. It took a little bit to get it in there. I can see behind it, you guys can't. Okay, that one's in. I'm not putting any real pressure on it right now. I'm just trying to get them in there. Just trying to get them in there. Now they're all in, so I'm going to just kind of work my way around, put a little pressure on them, and hopefully this will pop right off. Yeah, it's moving now. All right, see that? Moving out of the way. I can probably just knock that off now. Let me get a dead blow. Yeah. So that is now off. I'm going to go ahead and pull these screws back out. Okay. Now, so this inner piece here, there's a little, it's got a split back here behind it. When this taper comes up on here, it will kind of clamp it in place or kind of tighten up on that. So we're going to probably just have to, again, take our dead blow now, and hopefully that'll come off of there without too much trouble. We've got the gear puller on here now. It's all tightened up, snugged up. Again, I'm just going to use my impact wrench here, or electric wrench, whatever you want to call this thing, and we're going to see if it'll come off. All right, it's just hung on the keyway. There we go. So that is off now, and we can reuse this piece no problem at all later on. Nothing wrong with that. So I'm going to right now just go ahead and kind of put it back together, just so we don't lose the parts. So we're on the back of the motor now, and just a little bit about this. These should be just covers covering up the ends. The bearings are kind of in these housings right here. There is a note up here. It says self-lubricated for normal bearing life, for longest life. Lubricate yearly as follows. Remove the drain plug, so there's a drain plug down here. Inject new grease at the fill opening, which is up here. Run motor to discharge excess grease. You turn it on, let the grease come out, and then replace the plug. So this basically, you would pack this with grease on a yearly basis. Who knows when the last time it was done. I took the plugs out, and there's a little bit of grease in there, but it's pretty dry. So we're going to go ahead and try pulling these off and just take a look at things. So I'm not exactly sure how. I think these three here kind of hold the bearing inside. I'm not exactly sure, but I do know that these four outer bolts is what holds this bell housing on. So we're going to start by zipping those out real quick. All right, and I think just to be on the safe side, I'm just going to go ahead and take these out. I'm not sure exactly what their purpose is, but I figure it ain't going to hurt to pull them on out in case they're holding something in. So this is the front side with the shaft, and we'll just do the same process. I think I'm going to go ahead and pull. There's like a little metal cover over this. There's a couple of screws in here. And I think I'm going to go ahead and pull that off first, just to make sure I'm seeing everything. I do have some wires coming out, so we're going to do away with these old wires here. Those will not be recycled and reused as we go forward. I'll be putting proper wires in here rather than Romex. So let me go get some electrical cutters, and let's see what kind of, let's pull this tape off, see how they wired these together. Wow, interesting. I'm sitting here looking at this, and okay, I see what happened. That wire was on there, but it came out of the crimp. That makes sense. So you had 3 hot wires going to it. There was no ground. We should have run that way, but that's not very safe. I'm just going to, I think, we'll just clip these 2 wires. Let me go grab some wire cutters. All right, let's get rid of that. All right, that's all the leads. These are all bolted together, which is a good way of doing it. Get good tight connections. There's a wiring diagram here for low voltage versus high voltage, and anyway, that all looks to be in decent shape. We'll have to put new leads on our feed wires when the time comes, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. Let's see what we need to do here. There's a couple of screws holding this box on. All right. All right, let's see if we can go ahead and get these screws out. I'm having to pull that one connector off. That was, the wires were hooked in. They're too big to fit through this grommet, so I'm leaving them wired up in the same configuration, but that's just to kind of get them through this thing. Now we can get them on through. Okay. All right, we'll deal with that in a minute. Let's flip it on around. Take the other 4 off here. All right, let's get this shroud off. Everything looks fairly decent in there. I think we're ready now to go ahead and take this end cap off down here, which will bring the rotor out from the stator. So the rotor is the part that turns. The stator is the outside part on the inside where all the windings are to stay stationary. There are some little ears here on the front of these castings, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a screwdriver and a hammer, and I'm going to tap these out. I think I'll use my big hammer here. And I'll do some on this side as well. All right, that's actually broken loose. You can see this front bell housing is now rotating, and I think we can just pull the whole rotor out. Now when I come out of this back bearing, it won't be supported in there, so I want to make sure that I'm trying to keep from dragging it across there as much as I can. So let me get over here and see if it'll come on out. Here we go. All right, there we go. So I'm just taking a quick peek in here. This doesn't look to be in too bad a shape. All right, so I'm glad I took those screws off the outside, because that was actually a cage that held this bearing in, and that bearing is still on there. So you can see here, this little piece here with the 3 screws, that was the 3 screws there, and you'll have a similar thing on the front. So what we'll need to do now is get this front piece off. So there's a bunch of crud and stuff on the shaft. I'm thinking that may be part of why this isn't wanting to slide off. So I'm going to take a wire wheel and come in here and just clean this up real good. All right, that bearing has come out. Let me pull this off. What it is that bearing fits up inside of a housing. It's fairly tight fit in there. All right, so we got the rotor out. The bearings are on here. These are pressed on, so I don't know if I can get this onto my arbor press that I have here in the shop, or whether I'm going to have to take this out to the museum to the hydraulic press. I don't think my plate, think my plate's too thick that I have on my arbor press to fit in this gap, but I've got some stuff out at the museum we can do that with, so I may have to haul these out there and just press those bearings off. I was looking at a minute ago, these bearings that are in here are made by New Departure, 3206. I'm pretty sure that I can just run by my local bearing supply place and they'll probably have these in stock. If not, I'll order some and get some in and we'll replace these. I'll come in here and clean up these end bells, get all the old grease out of these. There is some, the grease in these. There are grease in them, but it's not the freshest. It's kind of dried up. So it's been a while since this motor's been serviced. And while we have this apart, I'll probably go ahead and try to get these components cleaned up, get a fresh coat of paint on them. I got the bearings pressed off of this. Sorry I did it off camera. I just took that to the museum and we put it up on the hydraulic press. It did not take a whole lot of pressure. These bearings are just kind of, they're on here. It's a tight fit, but it's not a super hard press fit. Now, these bearings are probably original. Here they are right here. They're probably original to the machine, which would date these from about 1941. The bearings on here are New Departure, number 3206. I carried them up to the bearing place, and the guy's like, man, them are some old bearings. You don't hear New Departure very often anymore, and they've been out of business for, 30 years or something. I don't know exactly how long, but he was able to find me some replacements. But anyway, these came right off, no big deal. Put a little force on them. They were kind of stuck in place, but once you got it broke free, it just slid right off, no problem. So the new bearings I got are these Koyo bearings, probably made in China or someplace, who knows where. But I've actually used this brand before. They're decent bearings. And he was able to look up the cross-reference, whatever. They're pretty much the same. Japan, that's where they're made. So actually Japan, usually Japanese stuff's pretty good. So, but these, as you can see, are sealed bearings. They have the little guard on here, but that's pretty normal. I've ran into that before. Normally these would be sealed, they'd be lubricated, and you would never lubricate them again. But these little cages on here are made where they will pop off. And when you do, I'm gonna pop this one off. So let me get in here. It's just a little thin piece of metal, more or less, that covers that up. There it comes. And when you pop it off, you basically have the same type of arrangement as the old bearings. Now again, these are pre-lubed, but in this form here, the grease can get in and around them, so we can hopefully lubricate these once a year, etc. I already popped the other side off, so I can tell by feeling these. Once I got these over to my parts washer, cleaned them up, and rolled them around, these bearings, they're not terrible, but you can hear it. Let's see. I don't know if you guys can hear that or not. This one's a little bit worse, but it sounds like there's just a little bit of sandpaper in there. They just don't sound that great. These have been cleaned out. The new bearings, these are just quiet and smooth as can be. So it was time for new bearings, no big deal. I think we're going to go ahead now and try to put the bearings back on here and get everything back in the housing and ready to go back, the motor go back together. So I've got my new bearings. These, I measured them, and it's a tight fit on here. It's not really what I'd call a true press fit, but these are pretty much the same size. So they go together pretty well, but it is a tight fit. You're not just going to slide it up on there. You're going to have to press it, but it shouldn't take much. So I've got, we're going to use my new arbor press here. This will be the first time I've really used it. And I'm just going to place the bearing down on the plate here. I'm going to do the back bearing first. Whoops. There is this little dust shroud. It needs to be on there, so I'm going to make sure that that is in there. We'll put this in place. And I think that's probably lined up good enough right there. And let me get my handle and we'll see if we can press this in place. Okay. No problem at all. It's pressing on without too much leverage. I think what's happening here is that I got to get it lined up. That plate in the bottom is a tight fit. There it goes. It's coming through now. And it goes down to a shoulder, and that's as far as it goes. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead now. I think I'm going to hold off pressing the other bearing on because of how this is going to have to go together, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But now we're ready to put the actual casting on the back here. Let me go grab that. So this is the bell housing that goes on the back side. That this bearing here will fit down inside. Because there's this little piece in the back that we put on here that gets screwed in, I need to be able to align that up and get it on there. So we're going to put this together as an assembly first, and then I will tighten that in there. So this bearing kind of just presses in place like such. And again, it's a fairly loose fit. It shouldn't take a whole lot. I hope I got enough height here in my arbor press to do this. It's going to be really close. But yeah, I think it's going to be just fine. I don't have room to put the plate up under it's my problem. But I think it's going to work. So let me go ahead and get my ram down here. And this is going to press in. This doesn't take much at all to get this one in. All right, so that is in place. So what I'm going to do now is get the holes lined up for that little piece in the back, and we'll get that screwed in and put the screws in and go ahead and get that all buttoned up, and I'll probably do that off camera. So I'm back over here. I have my actual, the stator here, the motor base. I did go in here and clean this up and put a little paint on it. I didn't spend a whole lot of time. This motor's kind of out of sight, but I did want to clean it up and get a fresh coat of paint on it. But we're going to go ahead now and come in here and put the stator back in. So very carefully, we're just going to bring these two back together. Get my apron out of there. And go ahead and get some bolts started. I want to go ahead and bolt this back bell housing in place. Go ahead and get it on the motor, and then we'll assemble the other one from this side. So I got my bolts here. I'm going to go clean those up on the wire wheel before I put them back in, and we'll be back in a minute. So we're ready now to put the other bell housing on, but we're going to have to do this one a little bit different because of the fact that we got this little piece that has to be screwed in, and the only way to get it aligned is really to be able to have access to it. We're going to go ahead and put this bearing into the housing and then put the retainer on the back and then slide this on and then press it on up here. So I got the bearing in down here. This is usually it usually goes in pretty easy. There we go. That bearing is in there now. And we'll go ahead and put the cage back on here behind it and get that screwed in place. There's 3 screws here. One of them is shorter than the other, and if you see that it's down on the casting. So the short one, I'm going to go ahead and put it in first. It goes right there. The 2 longer ones go back here. Okay, so now this whole housing is ready to slide up on here. The bearing is inside. And we're going to have to kind of, I don't know if this whole assembly is going to fit in my press. I'm going to take it over there. We may have to take a hammer and press this or push it on with a hammer. I'm not sure yet. So let me see how we can put this on. Well, I got it over here and it barely fits in the press, and there was about 3/4 of an inch above the shaft or so, but which really is probably about all I got to press it down anyway. So I think this is going to work. I've got a piece of pipe over the shaft that's actually pressing on the whole bell housing right here around this collar, which is then in turn pressing directly to that bearing behind it. So hopefully this is just going to go right on. So let's get some pressure on here. I'm going to try to get my housing more or less aligned where I want it. I can move it around later. Yeah, it's pressing on. And it's not taking a whole lot of force to do it. All right, so I'm down now to right where this housing is coming in there. Before I go any deeper, I want to get these bolts started because this housing actually presses into the body here just a little bit, and once it starts pressing in, you can't adjust it. So I want to go ahead and get these in place and kind of get them lined up. I'm going to see if I can press it in just a little bit farther. Go ahead and get it kind of going down into the housing, and I saw it move just a little bit. And that's probably good right there. So let me go ahead and pull this out now. And I'm going to take this back over to the bench and we'll tighten those bolts up, and I think we should be in pretty good shape. Let's try her out. So guys, I have taken some time and over here on these leads, like I said, I wasn't real happy with the insulation on some of these wires. So I took some friction tape and wrapped them up real good. Friction tape, if you're not familiar, is similar to electrical tape, but it's more of a cloth base, and it's made to be in more of a rough environment. It just holds up better over time than the plastic on electrical tape. So I wrapped up all the wires in that all the way down. I went ahead and put a lead on here. I haven't fired this thing up yet, so we're going to try it out and see what happens. So keep your fingers crossed. Everything should be good. It turns freely, so you know everything should be good. Let's see what happens. There it goes. Sounds nice. Now, one thing I do want to do is we don't have these bearings packed with grease right now. It just has the grease that was on the bearings when it was new. These fittings up here, they actually just had plugs in them, and I have replaced that with a grease fitting just so that I can come in here with a grease gun, and we're just going to basically pump grease in there. I hope I got enough grease in this gun. I'll tell you what, I'm going to alternate back and forth between these. You really want to do this while the motor's running. That makes sure you get grease down in those bearings. You can hear the grease going in those bearings. That one's getting kind of tight. That one's getting kind of tight, so I think that's good enough. I'm going to just let this run for a little while and just kind of see how it sounds. And we'll be back in a little bit. I'll let this thing run for 10 or 15 minutes. Everything sounds good, feels good. You know, it's warm, but barely. I mean, I think it's fine. No more warm than you would expect for a motor to get after running for a while. So we're going to go ahead and put the sheave pulley back on now. So I'm going to start by coming in here and putting this keyway back in. The large piece goes in first. Let me get this keyway lined up here. This will go on And I can kind of see about where this was in here before, and I'm just going to kind of bring it in there to about the same spot, which is right there. So that should hopefully align up with my belts on the other machine. There's a little key there. Let me knock that down. All right, so now we'll pull the outer bearing on here. Now again, I've mentioned this before, but this is a taper back here behind this and here. So when you tighten this on here, it's split right here. This is it's split in two places, so that's gonna actually compress this whole bushing on the inside onto that shaft to make sure it's on there really good and tight. So these little sheave pulleys are kind of interesting the way they work. And so again, there's two sets of holes here. One is for tightening it on there and one is for pressing it off. We want to go into the ones that are actually threaded up in here, so we'll be squeezing this together, squeezing that taper together, tightening that taper up from the hub to the shaft of the motor so that everything is good and tight. So with that, so this motor, getting close to being ready to go back on. We need to put the shroud back on here and undo my electrical stuff over here so we can wire it back up in the machine. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the shroud back on. There's a grommet here that these wires come out of, and we gotta just kind of feed all of them through here. They get kind of tight. Actually, I had to take some of the wires or the nuts off of these to get them through here a while ago, or when we did it before. So I'm probably gonna have to do the same thing here. So let me take these off. That's just some little, there's a bolt that goes through some crimps on there that you tighten up your leads into, get a good connection. And then these screws hold the shroud in place. All right guys, our motor's ready to go back together. I think I am going to shoot this with just some little touch-up paint here on some areas that didn't get any paint on them. And this motor will be ready to go back on the lathe. Well, we've got this old motor, probably dating from 1941, all rebuilt now. New bearings, been checked out from head to toe. I think it's good for another long time. And with that, that's going to be a wrap for this episode. I really was wanting to get a little farther along in this, but once again, it's a busy time of year and I have run out of time in the shop to get this done. Good news is that we're ready to put this motor back in the lathe. Once the motor gets in there, I'm ready to hook up the wiring, and I've got everything I need to get that done. So unless something just totally unforeseen happens, I see no reason why we won't have this machine running here very, very soon, which I'm excited about. Hopefully be making some chips. So thanks for watching, guys, and hopefully in the next episode, you guys will see the LeBlond run. Thanks.